Gemma Black. Oh, Gemma Black. All the way from Tasmania, the very southern tip of Australia, where it is now Monday morning for us at 6 something or other in California. Gemma is an internationally acclaimed calligrapher. She was selected for a prestigious Winston Churchill Memorial Fellowship, enabling her to study calligraphy in the UK. She's a fellow of the Calligraphy and Lettering Art Society in the UK. Gemma's taught all over the place in Europe, South Africa, US, Canada. Gemma is not only a talented calligrapher and artist, she's a scholar and delves deeply into her areas of interest. For this highly polished and entertaining look at Ireland's national treasure, the Book of Kells, Gemma worked in conjunction with Susie Bioletti, is that how you pronounce her name?
Yeah, Bioletti.
Head of Conservation at Trinity College, on the tools and pigments used in the Book of Kells. She'll share her discoveries with us today. Welcome, Gemma.
Elena, thank you, and welcome everybody. I'd like to welcome you from all over the world, and I'd also like to welcome those people who've come from Ireland. I am going to talk to you about your own national treasure, of which I'm sure you know quite a deal about. Thank you everyone for your support and welcome. So I'm going to share my screen and get our talk underway. And just need to get rid of Alrighty. So you should all be able to just see the PowerPoint presentation, and I think that's it. Okay. Here we go. Welcome. Ireland's national treasure, the Book of Kells, is full of mystery, symbolism, history, Christological imagery, and unprecedented artwork. Our first image that we're going to look at is the 8-circle cross. The late 12th century scholar Giraldus Gambrinus lived from 1146 to 1223. Looking at those dates, it's around about the same time as Fibonacci. He described the Book of Kells thus: "Look closely at it and you will penetrate the innermost secrets of art. You will find embellishments of such intricacies, such compactness and density, such wealth of knots and connecting links, in such fresh and lustrous hues that you might believe it is the work of angels, rather than that of a human being." In his book Calligraphy and Lettering says, "Insular half-uncials were used in the famous manuscript The Book of Kells and the Lindisfarne with intricate ornamentation and glorious initials. These were highly sophisticated and formal letters." Dennis Brown, who grew up in Dublin and was exposed regularly to the Kells manuscript as a young man, was surrounded by all things Celtic and Celtic thought. He describes the Book of Kells: "Its scribes benefited from their predecessors' work, and research shows incredible refinement." But let's go to the book itself. The Book of Kells and Australia, and this is where I come in. This is an image of the National Gallery in Australia. In March of 2000, the National Gallery of Australia held an exhibition entitled The Book of Kells and the Art of Illumination. The exhibition was a resounding success, with over 81,000 people coming to see it within the 2 months. I had the pleasure of organising a special private viewing for calligraphers and their guests from all over Australia and New Zealand. Apart from the main attraction, the exhibition displayed manuscripts from Australia and New Zealand collections, curated by Emeritus Professor Margaret Mannion from the University of Melbourne. The wealth of Australian and New Zealand manuscripts owned by the universities in the accompanying exhibition, The Art of Illumination, certainly held its own and fascinated many adults, teenagers and children alike. Professor Mannion said of the Book of Kells, "It's a powerful artistic expression of the Christian faith, and secondly, it portrays the history of the illuminated manuscript which flourished up until the 16th century, due to the advent, of course, of printing." But now to the book itself. Even though the Book of Kells is possibly the most talked and written about manuscript, there are only a couple of dozen or so practitioners of the text. As a practicing calligrapher in Canberra at that time, I was invited by the project team to present a lecture and give a little insight into the techniques the scribes used to create the text and the decoration, and also, importantly, how to recognise the letter forms. If you look closely at St. John's, this is St. John here, if you look at St. John, you'll see at the top Christ's head, one hand cut off, another hand there visible, and Christ's feet down here. And the other really beautiful thing about this particular image is that St. John is depicted as the scribe. All right, just trying to move that one on. Here is St. John, recognisable by his quill and the inkhorn, and the detail in this is still extremely clear. So just to set the scene, it might be best to start by giving you a brief background to the book itself. Currently, the Book of Kells is housed in the treasury of Trinity College, Dublin, and probably it will be for millennia to come. Trinity College houses over 600 medieval manuscripts, which contain languages, from Latin and Greek to Old Irish, Old English, Welsh, German, Dutch, Spanish, Italian, and Provençal, embodying early insular thought. Here the manuscript is displayed on a permanent rotation basis. The manuscript is under the protection of conservators known as Keeper of Manuscripts. I'd really like that title, Keeper of Manuscripts. Dr. Bernard Meehan and Susie Bialetti were on the project team, and they were responsible for the book's visit to Australia and also responsible for inviting me to join the team. Originally in 2 volumes, it is chronicled to have been rebound 3 times. The latest where it was bound into 4 volumes in 1953 by the English bookbinder Roger Powell. Mr. Powell travelled to Ireland to set up a bindery specifically to undertake this task. Peter and Sheila Waters were students of Mr. Powell at the Royal College of Art, and Peter became his equal partner for 15 years. Okie dokie. Powell worked on the manuscript for 3 months in Dublin, leaving the bindery in the hands of Peter to carry on with it. Later in 1960, they all arrived in Dublin to, as Sheila puts it, to see how it was behaving itself. That's the book. She also adds, in her experience with the Book of Kells, influenced my illumination design for the rest of my calligraphic life. A rare treat indeed. This next image is one of a recurring theme at the beginning of each of the 4 Gospels. And here I've actually written which one each of these evangelists' icon they belong to. St. John, St. Luke, St. Mark, and Matthew. The manuscript is a Latin Vulgate, a copy of the 4 Gospels comprising of the writings of the 4 evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Gospel, as the 2 Greek words gos and pel means good news. The volume exhibited on exhibition here in Australia was the second and the shortest of the Gospel narratives, that of St Mark, even though it's generally supported that St Mark's was the first of the four Gospels to be written, and that idea is called the Markan priority. Some scholars reject this altogether. Me, I don't know. I'm a calligrapher. I'm a technician. And to quote my friend Ewan Clayton, I make written artefacts. This little map that I'm bringing up now will give you an idea of Britain and Ireland and what's it all about. Mystery surrounds the Kells manuscript because its origins are uncertain. At the symposium on the Book of Kells in Canberra in the year 2000, scholars from all over the world presented papers, argued their cases for who, where, and why, and they left raising more questions than they answered. One scholar even said there was no why in the Book of Kells. Let's see. This is an image of the cross of St John on Iona. The book, which today contains 340 folios, is incomplete with about 30 folios missing. The leaves, which were cut down as much damaged, measures between 33 centimetres and 25.4 centimetres. So that size doesn't make the book one of the really huge manuscripts like Lindisfarne, but it actually makes it a smaller 13 by 10 inches. Fragments of facts are known about the book, but a comprehensive history is not complete. It is accepted to have been written by the followers of Columcille at the Columban monastery on the tiny island of Iona, off the Scottish west coast. Columcille means Columba of the Church. When Iona was invaded, as indeed it was many times, it is believed that the monks fled with the manuscript, possibly incomplete, to a church in Kells Island, and if not Kells, an abbey in County Meath, very close by. The manuscript was written on vellum. It was approximately 800 in Common Era from the Old French vellon, V-E-L, veal. Preparation of both the vellum and the parchment is split sheepskin, for writing is a highly crafted, dirty, extremely smelly activity. After we receive the vellum, we use a pumice powder to get rid of any impurities. An interesting aside, our Tasmanian timpanist here in the Tasmanian Symphony Orchestra, and I have an allegiance with the orchestra through my oboe playing partner, he buys his same vellum from the Vellum Works in Ireland, and I've given you a couple of addresses there, one in England and one in Ireland, and the timpanist needs them for the drum heads. I found that quite fascinating. Here at the other end of the world, we buy our vellum from the same place. However, vellum it was, and vellum protected its life. Here we can see the Lindisfarne Gospel and the Kells Gospel, the same page in both manuscripts. Kells belongs to a small group of insular manuscripts, and in this instance relating to a form of Latin manuscripts in Britain and Ireland in the early Middle Ages. Other notable manuscripts, similar in Celtic design and calligraphy, is the Lindisfarne Gospels, the Book of Durrow, the Book of Armagh, the Ectonac Gospels, and the books of Durrow and, Durrow and Armagh. The list is growing, and the Durham and Lichfield. Of course, there may be many other manuscripts that have not survived the ravages of war and/or poor conservation and preservation methods. The Book of Kells' resemblance in the calligraphy, illumination and design to the Lindisfarne Gospels leads me to believe that at some time the scribes working on Kells also had access to this other great manuscript, executed at the Columban monastery at Lindisfarne otherwise known as Holly Island on the coast of England, sometime before. Many of you may have been to Holly Island and enjoyed the presence there. The Cairo pages is what you're looking at now of both manuscripts are extremely alike in their fundamental design, which leads me to believe that the one, Lindisfarne, was the basis of learning and inspiration for the other. The common link in all of these books is the calligraphy, the illumination, the use of zoomorphics, which enables us to date them to within 200 years of each other, and firmly place these manuscripts in the High Celtic art period. There are, however, differences. The Kells is the only manuscript where the variety of decoration and ornamentation has been produced with such complexity and in such quantity. Kells displays design features from Greek, Latin, Germanic, and Byzantine art. The manuscript is a real cosmopolitan mix. It's difficult to view the Kells images and focus on one entity, as the work has been intricately and purposefully designed to be a complex whole. To this end, the Book of Kells stands alone and is unique. Before we delve into the Cairo page, I want to share a little of these other manuscripts, these other pages. This is what's known as an ornamental text page. It's ornamental, but it actually reads. We have a Q, a U, an O, an N, an I, a U, and an M. And this is from St. Luke's chapter 1. And down here, I've enlarged this area just here, so that you can see all these enigmatic little figures twisted around the lettering. Here we have an I and an N, an I, a U, and an M, all linked together. One of the beauties of a manuscript to a calligrapher like myself is that it contains not surprisingly, much human error. Words or letters are missing, words where they shouldn't be, holes in the vellum. It is this human nature that breathes life into the Book of Kells and gives us more of an insight to the mind of the scribe at the time, indicating Celtic thought. It tells us how problems were solved or not solved, as well as providing us with information on the workings of the medieval scriptoria. Some of the books are complete with colophons, which gives us accurate data. However, the colophon in the Book of Kells is missing. For those who aren't familiar with the word, and of course many of you are, a colophon is a tailpiece of information which is usually worked in the back of a manuscript giving data, the scribe, the place, the date. One of the most famous colophons is that of the Lindisfarne, which you've just seen a minute ago. That colophon leaves us in no doubt whatsoever as to its history. There is no mystery in the Lindisfarne Gospels. Some colophons are long, descriptive, and humorous, where others are quite precise. In the modern book, the information once housed in the colophon will usually be found on the reverse of a title page in the front of a book. The Book of Kells is said to have undergone some rather barbaric treatment, where at some stage it was stripped of its bejewelled covers, including the loss of a number of folios, leaving the last few chapters of St. John's Gospel missing. For a time, it is chronicled that the book remained buried under a sod for 2 months and 20 days for its protection from raiders. Also in medieval times, it was thought that any book written by a saint, and in this case it's St. Columcille, was impervious to immersion in water, and so at the same time, the custodian of the Book of Durrow, which I mentioned earlier is a sister manuscript to the Book of Kells, after dipping it in water, gave that water to his sick cattle as a cure. Again, this gives us an idea of Celtic thought at the time. It could account for the water damage in the Book of Kells. However, this later story could quite possibly be true. Even though there are definite signs of deterioration and water damage in the book, the binder used to mix with the coloured pigment possibly saved its life. If you've ever tried removing dried egg off a plate, you will agree it is a hard task. The white of egg was mixed to make glaire and used to bind the pigments together so that they would remain fixed in one state on the vellum. Egg yolk, now called egg tempera, was also employed to bulk out the pigment and also give it a raised and translucent appearance. To this day, the brilliance of the pigments in the Book of Kells is still apparent. It was thought for a long time, even up until the last century, and I'm talking 20-something years ago, it was thought that lapis lazuli, a blue pigment from that time, Afghanistan, but since then it's been proven that the blue is actually woad. In the book we see verdigris, the green, red and white lead, vermilio, orpiment being the yellowish pigment, which is actually arsenic trisulfide, and it is the orpiment that gives the gold-like impression, though no gold was used in the Book of Kells. It is interesting also that the pigment orpiment was given a golden, which is a golden shiny hue, was also used in the Egyptian scrolls and also in the tomb of King Tutankhamun. All right, these quills I'll talk about a little bit later, but the Book of Kells was written with a tool just like this quill, and none of the feathers. They were all stripped back to the barb, and the reason we know that is because they're depicted in medieval manuscripts thus and not thus. Oops, pardon me. Okay. This actually reads, and I'll just go over a little bit of it for you, not the whole lot. We're going to talk about the ink that's been used here. But I just want to pick out a couple of things for you. One of the beauties of speaking English in this case, or any language that has a Latin base, these manuscripts, even though you may not read Latin or understand Latin, you can pick out quite easily what some of the words say. So in particular, let's just have a look here at Maria, quite obvious. So there you've got Maria, and here we have what looks like Magdalene. Okay, great. So if that's Maria Magdalene or Mary Magdalene, then that is a G. Very easy to find out what the letters are. Here is a very usual famous ampersand for the Book of Kells. This little fellow is repeated time and time and time again throughout the manuscript. If we go down here, you can see M-A-G-N-U-S, Magnus, Angelus. All right, so you can see clearly that this is the letter G of the time, and to calligraphers, that sort of information is really important. But let's look at the media that's been used. The main text is written in an iron gall ink that over time has browned and appears sometimes faded. This iron gall ink is made from crushing oak galls or oak gall apples mixed with gum arabic, copperas and water. A recipe for ink that I have made myself and delighted in using. Holly berries were also used to make ink, as well as lamp black, it was called, which is carbon, soot. The importance of the calligraphy in Kells is paramount because it has been classified as one of our very few prime specimens on the evolution of the writing curve, meaning that the formation of the letters are at their most perfect. Edward Johnston says, the letters, this is of the Book of Kells, the letters combine extreme gracefulness with an unusual appearance of strength, and the illumination throughout the book is most elaborate and beautiful. The main text is known as an Irish half-uncial, and many of these letter forms are still in use in the Irish hand today. Uncial's literal translation is inch, but in Old Latin, its translation is thumb. It might give us an indication to letter size, might not. The ornamental text in the book usually intermingle with the very intricate interlace and the illumination. The period Kells was written in was at a time of transitional scripts, where often is the case in Kells, variations of the one same letter were used, and I'm going to point a few of those out. Apart from the use of fine hairbrushes, which were made from the hair of squirrel tails, the essential tool for the scribe was the quill. Fashioned from the flight feathers of the goose, other quills would have been made from feathers of smaller birds, such as crow, hence the term crow quill. Many of you will know this. A quill would have to be cured before it's used, which means that, quite simply, it had to be left for a period of over 12 months for the nail-like substance to go hard. There are, however, other quick methods of curing quills, and one of them is to immerse a quill into hot sand. And this method, one has to be very careful not to shrivel up a bunch of quills that you stick into the hot sand like I did. A well-kept sharp knife was used to nib the pen, hence the term penknife, to obtain a chiselled edge shape. It takes some practice to cut a quill, however, they can be nibbed and reshaped as often as the length of the barrel allows, which can't be said of its modern counterpart, the metal nib. The penknife served another important role in the execution of the manuscripts. We know from pictorial evidence that it was used for holding the surface of the vellum down while writing. This is a close-up image. Here's the full page. And I will mention here that on the manuscript itself, most of the pages had 12 to 15 lines of writing on it. That's why I think the manuscript itself was so bulky in this way, as opposed to some of the other manuscripts where the lettering was closer and more compact. This is from the opening of Matthew's Gospel. Not the opening, this is from Matthew's Gospel. And what you're seeing here, if you're not sure, it is actually the Beatitudes page. Blessed are the poor in spirit. And if you have a look here, the scribe has actually used the stretching of the letters to create the line endings so that there wasn't so much space left at the end of the line. And also use of little flabellum or little flower-like line fillers were used. And here you can see the N is just starting to branch out. The calligraphy in many cases through the manuscript physically interacts with the illumination. Here are some really, really lovely, strong sound letters. These little fellows, it's the letter B, of course, and here's the head on at the top of each one, and here's their legs sticking out on top of the head of the one below, and on it goes. There is nothing left in the Book of Kells that the attention given is not paramount, right down to the tiniest image of birds, people. You'll see. So the next image is the Brevis Causae of St. John. Okay, so this comes from St. John's Gospel. What this part is, it's a summary of the Old Latin. The Brevis Causae is the summary of Old Latin into a New Latin of the time. So basically, this is a really good example of the different inks here. This text begins well, it's actually Johannes. Okay, so we have the I, the O, the H, A, N, N, I, S. Okay, the long S in use here, which is really interesting because there's the use of the long S, but also the short S. It's quite exciting. Here's the G, right? S-O-L-V. I'll talk more about the U and the V. But over here we have a really good use of the different pigments. The augment, organic purples, red lead, vermilion, and black carbon ink, all on this one page. Right. Oh, now next is one of my favourite images. I don't want to end, shall I? Here we go. Okay. This is in Matthew's Gospel, and it's a very famous page in the Book of Kells. It's actually the arrest of Christ, and you can see Christ there with his sword-like hands, almost like, you know, come and get me. And these two very unlikely looking lads picking him up. But what interests us, apart from the beautiful illumination, is the lettering. I'm just going to come closer in to this section up here so that you can see what's going on. All right. So here, what that section reads is an imno dicto exerant in motum Olivetti. Now, I'm not a Latin scholar, and you can hear that from my pronunciation of the Latin, but let's have a look. Here we have the ampersand that is very common in the Book of Kells. Here we have one word that says imno, and this, my friends, is a letter Y. I'll say no more. We have a letter M for mother, N and O, and the word says imno, they're singing as they go to the Mount of Olives, Olivetti. Also note the flabellum. It was widely used in warmer climates around the altars to keep insects away and become a symbol of defense against impurities. So that's why in the Book of Kells we see a lot of these little vine-like things with little circles on the end. But look at this Y. It is so beautiful and so beautifully executed. Here you can see one way of M presentation, and here you can see another. Also see this style of N. This is the text at its finest. Oops. Next, just do it that way. All right, here, I put this in really just to show you the fun that and the detail that the scribes of Kells have put into their little, what I call these ones, humorphics, because we've got the human involved, letter D, and the zoomorphics, of course, which is the technical term. But these humorphics, I love them. And look how beautifully executed these letters are. I'll mention just here the base of the downstroke. The quill was drawn down and then a bit of pressure applied, and the quill, being a nail-like substance, actually spread and opened to give that base the beauty that it has. This letter can actually be done all in one stroke, believe it or not. However, this is what is so beautiful, and these heavy triangular serifs, really beautiful. There's a little video later on, and when I do these for you, you'll see that they are not nearly as beautiful as what you can see here, because I'm working with a metal nib, not a quill, and my metal nib will not open like that, so I've just left mine straight. Look how beautiful these letters here are. Okay, let's push on. Holes in the vellum, the scribes kept working. Here, I'm just going to see if no, I don't want to do that. Here you can see dots in that word there. So this word, autumn, this actually says IPS, which is an abbreviation of Christ. So it's actually abbreviation of Jesus. So Jesus now, okay? So that's what that part there says. And the little dots tell us the scribe wrote the word now, and it's a mistake. I wish our clients were so forgiving that we could present work that has little dots in it to say, oops, I made a mistake. However, they won't, they don't. And but I just think this type of thing, it gives us a lot more information about the scribes who are working at that time. Beautiful. Okay. Push on. Here we have got two images of this one, and then this little decoration above is that this word is longer than what it is, how it's seen here. So an XPS, a lot of you actually do already know this, but there are people who don't. So this is short for Christ. So here we have IHS, which is Jesus, XPS, Christ. All right. So this whole area is talking about Jesus Christ, Son of God. The DI is with the truncation mark above is the die for day for God. So I'm going to come up a bit closer here. Jesus' head sitting in the middle of the letter I and the letter H co-joined there, and the letter S. And the fish, in this instance, this is an I, an H and an S, and the fish is our truncation mark. And it's telling us that IHS is Jesus. And here's the word autem coming again. Let me just, A-U-T-E-M, and obviously it's in the right place. All right, but let's go a little bit closer here. As I mentioned a bit earlier, nothing in the Book of Kells is left, or everything in the Book of Kells, put it this way, is important. And you can tell that by the amount of attention that has been given to every little section. This is a very common feature of Celtic work, which is dot work. And it's been in Celtic, much earlier Celtic manuscripts have the dots been used. And here we have, again, this wonderful, this is a little wolf, we think. What I want to bring to your attention is the beauty of this letter form here, some of which you will be able to read. The letter F, this first word is fratum, which is from the sea or over the sea or the sea. F-R-E, letter T. So an E-T ligatured together, and a U and an M. Here we have O-B, L. Well, now this is getting really tricky over here. But to be able to work out what the letters are, you have to really look at each letter individually. And sometimes you just get a bit confused and it doesn't matter. But understanding what the letters are will enable you to execute the letters accordingly. I, T, I, S, U. On this page, I wanted to show you here, adentite actually means, so this is A-D-T-E-N, D. The use of two different Ds. This is a very typical uncial, half uncial style D. But Book of Kells D also was this. Looks like a C-H, when in fact it's a D-I-T-E. And here, and I know a lot of you again will know this, but the V and the U were interchangeable. Here is our V, vobis. You don't have a word in English that is UO, so in Latin you don't have a word that starts with UO. But here, T-U-M, this is a V-O-B-I-S, and that's where people get a little bit confused as to what the words say. But with a little bit of basic knowledge, you can actually, work out what's going on. All right, so this beautiful eagle. Now, this eagle is almost an exact copy of an eagle. It depicts St. John, of course, similar to an eagle in the Book of Armagh. So I have a very strong feeling that the Book of Armagh again was used as a teaching point for the Book of Kells. Also here again, two different style ends. Here's one. Look at those beautiful swellings down here on the bottom. Just lovely, two different ends. All right, let's push on. Canon tables. Canon tables, you'll see them in modern religious books, but this is an example of canon tables. You find them at the beginning of each of the 4 Gospels. Now what these do, some of you will know, but let me tell you that this would, let's say this was St. Matthew. This chapter, these are Roman numerals, so this chapter in St. Matthew's is the same as a different number chapter in St. Luke. And the same chapter we're looking for is a different numeric order in St. Mark's, and then St. John's here at the end. So these are actually different numbers, but they correspond with each other according to where the chapters, which chapters are the same story in each of those different books. So canon tables. And basically they are designed for gospel harmony. I really like that, gospel harmony. In other words, what's read in Matthew can be read in Mark, can be read in Luke, can be read in John. Okay, really beautiful depictions. This is from St. Luke's Gospel, and it's one of my absolute favourite pages. Not the favourite, but here we have a fantastic use of zoomorphics, and this is the letter Z. Now, what I'll quickly mention is that this style of Z is actually a forerunner of, just think about it, the style of a copper plate Z that comes down below the line. All right, just imagine that I've drawn that copper plate Z there. All right, this is its forebear, its ancestor, but this one is an extremely elaborate one. I want you to think about this little fellow here and keep him in your mind, because I'm going to talk about him a little further on. Okay, just think about him. It's a little line. I'm going to come in here close up and show you all of these, but let me say we have a Z, we have an A, we have a C, we have an H, we have an A. So the word is Zachariah, but the scribe didn't have enough room to put the rest of the name on, so the scribes just put it on the next line. Now, again, if only our clients were so accommodating. Let me come in nice and close for you. Look at the intricacy of this zoomorphic. So we've got peacocks and lions and all sorts of wonderful things. And look at the detail in here. So we've got peacocks, lions, flabella, we've got the Celtic knotwork, or the meandering as it was originally called. And I'll go one closer. Look at this headwork in here, a lion devouring a peacock. Tremendous, and the ornament and the colour is still extremely vivid. Alrighty, beard pullers. Now, aren't they interesting fellows? So here we have the beard pullers, but in this case they are depicting the letter N, one stroke coming across here and the other part of the letter N. So the letter N using beard pullers. What is a beard puller? There's a couple of schools of thought about what beard pullers are, and I'm actually not going to go into them all. One of the most, what would you say, definitions is that they are wise men. There are lots and lots of, you know how wise men usually pull their beards. Well, beard pullers. Have a little bit of fun with researching beard pullers. Gorgeous work. Look at this little dot work around here. All right. beard pullers everywhere in the Book of Kells. Okay, I'm showing you this for a couple of reasons. This is a stitching repair that you can see here. Okay. But I also want to show you this section here. These rubricated letters, the letters that have been dragged out by the scribe so very cleverly to make a justified block of text. And if that's something that's a recurring theme in pretty much all medieval manuscripts, where the text block is justified. They used a grid method, and you can see here little pin pricks all down the side here. I teach a course called Essence and Flow, and it's also subtitled The Grid Method, and it's about teaching in calligraphy in the same way to build a page like the medieval scribes did. Not what they did, but using it for contemporary work. And again, here you can see those little pin pricks. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to show you this. Okay, really interesting things to come. Remember that little line I asked you, L-I-O-N, that I asked you to remember? Well, here's another little animal in the middle of a manuscript, just an ordinary page. So what's that all about? So basically, it's telling us something. So the priest is up at the front of the the congregation reading away from this manuscript, and it tells us to read the first line first, then the second line, and then that information finishes. And so the next sentence starts here. But because there's all this room up here on this line, the scribe writes here, goes back in here, fills up that space with what comes after there. We know that because this little fellow is indicating a turn in the path, and the turn in the path tells us how to read this manuscript. And that lion that you saw earlier indicated to us as we're reading that this is the way it goes. So after the priest or whomever reads this part, they then go down to line 5 and continue that way. And you find scattered throughout the Book of Kells and other Celtic manuscripts that very indication. Okay, it's actually called Keen and Fay Eti, which is under the wing. And here he is again, a little closer. All right, and let me take you in one more. This particular page, the lettering is superb, absolutely at its highest peak of insular uncial. And that is why the Book of Kells is so unique. These lovely letters. This actually reads Volant, V-O-L-U-N-T-A-T-E. Okay? And our little fellow has all the detail. Silly thing. Oh, I've popped this in because never ever in a manuscript have I ever seen a human with teeth. And I imagine that at this time period, to have a full mouth of teeth like that was something quite rare. So here we have this letter B, and his head in the middle, and around he goes. There's one leg. Here's his contortionist, you can tell. But the way the teeth has been depicted, again, tells us a little bit about medieval thought, and that they actually did have teeth and they didn't all fall out. One of the most important spreads in the, well, not most important, but when the Book of Kells came to Australia, this is one of the most important spreads that was allowed for viewing. We had 3 different spreads. Some people, so we had these 3 different spreads available to us to view en masse when people came to see the Book of Kells. And basically this one is about the crucifixion of Christ. But the way the manuscript has been, gridded up and written, here we have Christ sitting up the top here. Christ is always, having a look in, Big Brother, and here's Christ's feet down here. So quite often you'll find these little images of Christ, you know, popping in. Over here, this leads us to talk about the crucifixion of Christ, and the scribes, these are all ampersand, little illuminated ampersands. And over here, look at this beautiful knotwork in the Greek style letter forms, all painted. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, I just need to go back for a sec, because this section here, which you're about to see, all the letters have been elongated to fill that little grid section in there. But what it's reiterating is what is over here. And they crucified him and divided his garments amongst them. Okay, so it's a way of reinforcing the message in a visual way. Lovely, lovely page. Okay, there's a close-up. Beautiful rubricated letters using a vermilio, and look at the way the letters have been stretched right out to make a little justified. There's a lot to be said for the grid method. St. Mark's Gospel, the four evangelists. Here we have St. Matthew, always depicted as the man angel. St. Mark, the lion, and here's a bit of flabella floating around. And here's his counterpart evangelists. We have the calf and the eagle. St. Mark, St. Luke, St. John. Okay, and the same in each one of these. So this, the four evangelists page is at the beginning of each gospel, and they're all different, but they're all very similar. Right. Okay, so this is the opening to St. Mark's Gospel, the four evangelists, the beginning of St. Mark's Gospel. This is known as a carpet page or an ornamental text page. So on this page that looks extremely ornamental and elaborate, it actually is all writing, it's all text, and it says Initium Evangeli of Jesus Christ. So it's the beginning of the evangelist story of Jesus Christ. And what was really funny about this when the book came to Australia, this was one of the images that was sent just prior to Kells' opening, and they printed it fantastically on the front page of the Canberra Times, and it was upside down. I don't know how they got that upside down, I really don't. But this page is so intricate. Let me show you. I'm going to bring you up here. I'm going to bring you all through here, and these are all letters. Okay, I'm going to do it this way now because I'm having trouble with that. Here we have St. Mark, and we know it's St. Mark, but, well, we know it's St. Mark because it's St. Mark's Gospel, but we also know it's St. Mark because he has his iconic lion wrapped around him. And what's really interesting in this instance, he's a beard puller as well. We have his head, and following down through this meandering, here's his hand pulling on his beard. So another beard puller, and lots of them. Such beautiful and intricate work. Okay, we're really getting through these now. An I and a T, right? And it's the first time I've actually seen griffins in the Book of Kells. I'm sure that there are others, but here I've pulled them up for you. The mythical griffin. Now, this is about the same size as a 50-cent piece. Well, our 50-cent piece maybe, you know, and the American 50-cent piece Canadian. I mean, I just think this is quite tiny. It's not that tiny, but it's quite tiny. Now, if you're ever wondering where all the lakes in Ireland have got to, they are all in the Book of Kells, and here are some of them. This is one of the most intricate meanderings I think I have ever seen. I call them meanderings because prior to being called Celtic knots, they were in ancient times called meanderings. And here we have so many snakes. I don't really know if they were snakes or eels, but I love the idea that all the snakes in Ireland are in the Book of Kells. This is stunning. And if you go into the treasury at Trinity College in Dublin, you'll find great big blow-up images of this section and others on the walls. Just amazing. Okay, we're getting to the best. I think that this is one of the most intricate pieces of artwork I have ever seen. The Cairo page in the Book of Kells. I alluded to it before. It's one of the earliest forms of a Christogram, formed by superimposing the first two letters chi and rho, the Greek word for Jesus Christ, in such a way that the vertical stroke of the rho intersects the centre of the chi. So what we've got here is an X and a P and an I, and the lettering down here is actually Semi-Uncial. I'll show you a close-up of that. And it says the genealogy of Christ. It's folio 34R in the Book of Kells, 34, 32, 32, 30, 30, whatever, in the Book of Kells. It has one of the most stunning array of spirals ever seen in any artwork in the world. I know that some people have redrawn the Book of Kells. I couldn't tell you how long it would take, sorry, not the Book of Kells, the Cairo page, but to be perfectly honest, and I'm not biased, I do think it's one of the most magnificent pieces of intricate art I have ever seen. And let me show you some close-ups. Again, some of you will have seen these, but maybe not all of it. So here in the middle we have Christ's head. Christ is central to this. Okay. Oh, part of my favourite. Here we have the Semi-Uncial. All right, and again, such fine lettering. And not only that, it's got dots all the way around it, all through here. Okay, now I'm going to show you this section up close and this section, and I think that you can pick out quite clearly what we have here. If not, let's talk about them. It indicates that the scribe had cats around, they had mice around or rats. They also had streams full of otters. And here we can see the otter with its head down with the fish in its mouth. Okay, a close-up of that letter form, looking very closely like about 6 to 7 nibwits high there, and the half uncial is not really that high. And over here, of course, 2 cats, 2 rats on the back, and here are 2 mice or rats fighting over the ecumenical host. So these scribes had a great deal of humour, as well as telling us what's around the scriptorium. Okay. And a close-up of that same Cairo with the angel, flanking up the side of the letter S. Just wonderful, huh? Just magnificent. I heard somewhere that there were about 2,000 spirals on the Cairo page. I'm not sure about that, but I think I read it somewhere. All right, so here we have another 4 evangelists opening page, and this is the one to St. Matthew's Gospel. Again, the 4 evangelists depicted with their iconic animals, and in Matthew's case, the man angel, all with wings. Okay, I'm going to go fairly quickly now. Well, no, not fairly quickly, but I want to just show you this page. This is the Liber Generationis, and what I love about this one, again, it's one of those ornamental text pages. So when you look at it, obviously you can see some letters, but you can't see them all. You have to take your time, do a bit of, get out a magnifying glass. I just want to show you this little fellow up here. Don't know why, but he hasn't got a face. There he is. Not sure why he hasn't got a face. But there are some things in the Book of Kells that were either just overlooked, perhaps the scribes the day and they thought they'd get back to it like that. Of in the middle of the word, top letter L, or intricate lines that we've loved. When I was a younger calligrapher and I first came across this painting, Eve painting, which it is, but I really didn't like it. And the more and more I've grown over the years, in my, I guess you'd call it my Celtic growth, or my calligraphic growth, I've never seen a baby Jesus look so much like an adult. And the paint, oops, let's go back. And the image is quite flat, but I have really grown to love this image of the Madonna and Child. So I just thought I'd pop it in there for you. There's no lettering, of course, on there. Okay, a couple of really interesting pages coming up. The only reason I wanted to show you this one is because we have, Christ is always popping up. Here's his legs and here's his head and all this beautiful angular. This is actually the genealogy of Joseph. So we have Joseph, of course, and this is the I, the letter I. Well, it's actually the I gave forth to the J, so let's put it that way. So this is Joseph's genealogy. So we have Joseph, son of Levi, Healy, son of, this is Q-U-I, 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 Q, all the way down, Fuit, F-U-I-T, F-U-T, F-U-I-T, Fuit, son of, is the son of Healy, is the son of Matha, is the son of Levi, is the son of Melchi. And it's a beautifully depicted page where, again, it's justified. It's built on that grid, that text block. And here we have this warrior with his spear and shield. Again, just, stunning work. Okay, one of the most famous pages in the Book of Kells, not so much for its artwork, although the art is fantastic. It is the tunked page, and tunked, T-U-N-C, means then, at that time. And the tunked page is quite famous for James Joyce in his writing of Finnegan's Wake, mentioning the tunked page in the Book of Kells. Now I'm going to come in closer, but let me read what he said about the tunked page in the Book of Kells. James Joyce, the Irish writer, 1939 wrote, plainly inspiring the tenebrous tunked page of the Book of Kells. And then it need not be lost sight of that there are exactly 3 squads of candidates for the Crucian Rose awaiting their turn in the marginal panels of Column Killer, chugged in their 3 ballot boxes, then set apart for such hanging committees. There were where 2 was enough for anyone, starting with old Matthew himself. So let's just come in a little bit closer. And then the Book of Kells, in that time period of the early 20th century, became a little bit more, people wanted to know a little bit more about it. And to have it featured in Finnegan's Wake, which is a very difficult book to read, I have to tell you. Again, I just want to show you the intricate dot work here, the angulars, here, the angular letters, the zoomorphic, the superb zoomorphic detail there, the tunked page in the Book of Kells. Okay, and here they are, the candidates waiting for the Crucian rose. Okay, the crucifix rose, that means. And here we go. Back to cylindrical carpet page. And page was bound
Gemma,
down. Book of Kells.
Hi, Gemma,
I can understand why.
Gemma,
Magnificent. Yes?
hi. Gemma, could you repeat that last part? Your connection cut out. We couldn't hear that previous slide.
Okay, Lily. All right, here we have the carpet page that I started the talk with, and I said that it was bound in the Book of Kells upside down, and I said, could you possibly understand why? All right, it is just so intricate and so beautiful. Just the last couple of images that we've got here, the temptation of Christ by the devil. And the passage that goes with this image is, Jesus was led to Jerusalem and made to stand high on a parapet of the temple. And here you can see the devil goading Christ. Right? And it's also the other reason why this image is important is that on the island of Iona, at that time that the Book of Kells would have been written, there were actually no stone buildings. They were actually wooden buildings. So you can imagine how easy it was for them to be sacked. And stone buildings were built thereafter. The unfinished page. This is an example, an unfinished page. It's a work text in. So the grid method has been used where the pinpricks, you can just see some of the pinpricks here, and here's a couple more over here, and how to work a manuscript page in that grid fashion. Again, with everything that you've already seen, you'll be able to look at this page and know how decorative it would be if the scribes actually finished it. Okay, you could jump right ahead to almost imagine what this page would look like. Okay, now this is a little, you might need your sound control here. It's a little video, very short, of what how the script is written. Apart from those beautiful bases, I have not got a tool that is going to give me that beautiful base, even though I build them up in a piece of And here's that piece written on vellum, and you can see the backbone of the calf skin coming down here. Okay. In this image, the artist leaves no doubt whatsoever as to the identity of the subject. With all its Christological imagery, a cross is placed above Christ's head, and he is flanked by angels and peacocks with their wings marked with Eucharistic hosts and their feet entangled in vine scrolls growing from the chalices. And to finish, unless more facts are unearthed, the mystery of Kells will continue while the delicate interlaced designs, zoomorphic decoration, ornamental text, and superb calligraphy will be appreciated by all who view the Book of Kells in the centuries to come. If you will indulge me just 1 minute longer, I'd like to read a quote, words of a media guide for you to ponder. Some will already know it. It's from the Silas Beatus T1. Is the refreshment of the reader. The one depletes the body, the other advances the mind. Whoever you are, therefore, do not unlabouring to bring you profit. If you do not know how to write, you will consider it no hardship. But if you want a detailed account of it, let me tell you. The work is heavy. It makes the eyes misty, bows the back, crushes the ribs and belly, and brings pain to the kidneys, and makes the body ache all over. Therefore, O reader, turn the leaves gently and keep your fingers away from the letters, for as the hailstorm ruins the harvest land, so does the unserviceable reader destroy the book and the writing. As the sailor finds welcome the harbour, so does the scribe the final line, Deus gratias semper, ever thankful to God. Thank you. I'll stop that share now and come back to you all. Hello, everyone.
Well, thank you, Gemma. Thank you very much. Can you tell that I didn't hear the beginning of the quote? Where was it from?
And the beginning of the quote, it is from the Silas Beatus manuscript, a scribe who worked in the scriptoria of that particular manuscript in 1091. Silos, S-I-L-O-S, Beatus, B-E-A-T-U-S.
Thank you.
Right.
Does anyone have any questions?
My cheeks are very red.
Yeah, I see that.
There are a few questions in the chat. Would you like me to cover those first and then open it up to everybody else?
Yes,
Absolutely.
please.
Okay, so Gretchen wanted to, if you could explain a little bit more about the little dots inside the letters. There was that page that had Christ picture with the fish, and then above it there were letters and there were dots. I think the dots were on each side of the letter, or were they in the letters? If you could explain what those dots were.
The dots were actually used just as a decoration to sort of make those little illuminations stand out. But that particular one that Gretchen you're talking about, I'm a little uncertain as to whereabouts in the letter you're referring to. So all I can say to that without looking at the image is that they would have been, oh, hang on. Are you talking about the dots in the letters of the word autumn?
I think that's what she
think
was
so.
referring.
If so, they are to say that this word doesn't belong here. Yeah, I beg your pardon. The dots to indicate that word does not belong there. So it just happened to be in the word autumn. The scribe actually wrote it by accident because they're copying other manuscripts.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
the word was incorrect, and so the scribe just popped the dots in.
And then Frances said she is curious about the man in the upper right with the knitted garments on.
Man in the upper right. At the opening of St. Mark's Gospel, where he was encompassed by his lion. Is that the one? Can you unmute yourself and ask me that, Francis?
Yes, that's the page. The
Okay. And his knitted garment?
it appears certainly he's even got looks like a sweater on with a collar knitted around it. I'm very familiar with Aaron's sweaters and I've designed them and he sure looks like he's wearing some kind of interesting knitted garment, but of course I could be absolutely wrong.
Okay, well, what I'd suggest is that you pop into your search engine and have a look for the opening of St. Mark's Gospel. You want the ornamental text page, the opening of St. Mark's Gospel, and blow it up, and then you'll be able to see him in all his knitted glory. I had a fight with the dermatologist, just in case you were wondering.
Dermatologist won.
Indeed.
Gretchen also had another question about the illuminators and wanted to know, did they draft the designs and how did they transcribe that onto the vellum, or did they sketch directly onto the vellum?
Straight onto the vellum is my understanding. The scribes worked in a completely different way to the way we work. We will do, a process where we will do a layout first, or maybe 19 layout, or sometimes we do something that is very off the cuff and just happens to work. The scribes were working for their scriptorium, for their church, for God, and they basically went in and did what they did on the vellum that they had. There were a little bit later on methods for transferring images, but most of the images would have just been drawn directly on using a very fine quill, or maybe even a scoring tool, because there was a lot of scoring going on at that time. Keep in mind that we're in the 800, late 700s, possibly on the cusp there. So there wouldn't have been, I'm fairly certain, a lot of transferring of anything. They knew their work straight in. Are there any other questions?
That's just amazing that they could do such beautiful work just straight off the cuff.
Yeah, I think you'll find that that was the way they worked. That was all they did. That was all they knew.
Louise Mary has a question about, let me read this. The MFA Boston has a statue from 1125 to 1150, Virgin and Child. The sculptor is unknown, but I wonder if it could be based on the drawing in the Book of Kells.
Oh, look, possibly. The Book of Kells and other sibling manuscripts have been the impetus for much design around the world. Possibly that statue, wouldn't know until I had a look at it. However, yes, I'd also like to mention another church down in, what's the name of the village? Anyway, in southern England, the whole church is designed, and it was in the 1920s, with all the images and all the carvings from the Book of Kells. It's just gone out of my mind at the moment. So yes, all over the world, artists have based their artwork on such fame and such wonderful early artists. And of course, we don't know any names. We know nothing of the scribes personally in the Book of Kells, and what a great shame. But that's why it's so interesting and why it's so famous, I think.
Next question. Elizabeth wanted to know if there was any connection between the Greek and Celtic meanders.
Okay, that's really not my area of expertise. However, I can say that the meandering design actually came across from the Nordic countries, came from early invaders and settlers, and you have to remember that even before Kells, the writing in Kells, there was a lot of metalwork as well, and metalwork was also designed using this Celtic, what we call Celtic knotwork, which was an earlier meandering. So there's a lot of influence, not so much from Greece to my knowledge, but really more from the northern countries coming into Scotland and then down into England and across to Ireland.
Evelyn wanted
That's
to
my
know.
understanding. Sorry, I'm just saying that's my understanding. You'd have to do a little bit more research into that.
Thank you. And Evelyn would like to know if you could respell the word. Is it T-U-N-T?
C. So T-U-N-C for Charlie.
Thank you.
Tunked.
And then actually Cynthia has a question, but it affects many of us. There was a point where your connection dropped out and you were discussing the candidates awaiting for the Crucian Rose.
Yeah, okay, let me read that to you again.
Thank you.
It's not very long. So it's from James Joyce's Finnegan's Wake. And he wrote Finnegan's Wake. It's such a difficult book to read. It's so hard. So in 1939. And so it says, plainly inspiring the tenebrous tunked page of the Book of Kells. And then it need not be lost sight of that there are exactly 3 squads of candidates for the Crucian Rose awaiting their turn in the marginal panels of Column Killer, chugged in their 3 ballot boxes, then set apart for such hanging committees, where 2 was enough for anyone, starting with old Matthew himself. So, the candidates of the Crucian Rose is actually the Rose of the Cross. So there that was that passage. I couldn't talk about the Book of Kells without mentioning Finnegan's Wake.
Thank you. Let's see. Oh, Cynthia has a question about, you mentioned that there was a P letter, but that the P, or is it an R? It seems that the R makes more sense in the word Christ. Or
that was in the key rows.
Oh, yeah. Yep. In the Cairo,
Yes.
the XPI and the IHS, not sure.
Yeah, it was in the key row. Yeah, the key row. And there's a letter that looks like a P, but I had thought that was an R, but I guess I'm wrong.
Okay, so the only letters on the Cairo page of the Book of Kells is a key row. I mean, we pronounce it differently all around the world, but whatever. It's the same thing. XPI, which is the Greek truncation for Christ. So the X is the large letter, then the P and the I. They're the only letters on the Book of Kells, apart from her Generatio.
And do you happen to that P? It's pronounced as a P or is it pronounced as an R? Am I being too I don't know?
I'm not 100% certain of the pronunciation.
Got it. Okay.
I think a little bit more research.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, pleasure.
Letter is a row.
Virginia would like to know the dimensions of the Book of Kells.
Okay, mentioned earlier in the talk, the dimensions are approximately, let me just find them, 23 centimeters. Okay, I'll give it to you in inches today. So we've got 13 by 10 inches is the page for now. It would have been slightly larger and wider than that. And in metric, it's 33 centimeters by 25.4 centimeters.
Thank you.
Keep in mind, I'm not an academic, but I am a technician, and that all my information comes from my study of the book, both here in Australia and also overseas. And I'm coming from an artist's and a technician's point of view, which is the way I'd like it to be.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Let's see, Barbara would like to know how the lettering would be taught. In other words, would they draw the letters at first? Where would they practice the letters?
They were copying. and they would have copied and earned their pen license by years and years of apprenticing themselves as a religious person to the scribe or the higher scribes. Definitely an apprentice type system. They learned from their masters. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. And
keep in mind, they were copying from other manuscripts, literally copying from them.
Barry would like to know, oops, wait a minute, Barry, we know that many manuscripts were produced on an assembly line basis. Any idea how many divisions of labor were involved in the Kells and how many people worked on it?
Look, I think that the generalization of scriptoriums has been sort of pigeonholed into there was this in a scriptorium, you know, a scorer, a writer, an illuminator, a gilder. And I think that the scriptoriums, the older ones, were perhaps not quite as formally set up as that, so that you could actually have, they say that there's approximately 4 different scribes, if not 5, in the Book of Kells. The amount of pages I've looked at looks like there could have been less than that. The intricacy of the letter forms in the Book of Kells in particular interact so thoroughly with the illuminations that I'm personally thinking that the scribe and the illuminators could have been one and the same. There were no gilders. And I think I think the later scriptoriums up into the Renaissance time, early Renaissance, late medieval, but we're talking about the mid-medieval times here, and I don't think that they had that regimented scriptorium type of place set up. I know that in later years, the 1200s, 1300s, 1400s, the limners or the illuminators' art, they did have a system like that. So, oh, Carol DeBosch, you're screen sharing at the moment. Okay, there we go. So, regimentation in the scriptorium, there would have been some sort of system. They would have had a young scribe who would have ground their ink or made their ink or fetched the berries. They would have had scribes doing certain parts. I mean, I guess it was just a matter of the best people of the time did the thing that they did best, all right? So Barry, yeah, I think that later times the scriptorium was more orderly like that, but in these early times, I think it was, you know, the best person for the job, if that helps.
Dodie would like to know if you teach a workshop on the lettering in the Book of Kells.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I had one last year. Beginning of this year. It's called The Book of Kells, The Nitty Gritty, and it's all about actually forming the letter forms in the Book of Kells. So yeah, we'll get onto one of those someday.
Okay. So
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
I'm going to let Elena unmute herself because you have a question that also Carol Johnson has about the pigment and about the woad. And so I'm going to, Elena, have you ask the question about pigments.
Well, I just wondered, what is the closest pigment to orpiment now? It's so amazing a color.
Yeah, it is, but it's also, yeah, it is an amazing colour, and it was used in a number of manuscripts in place of gold because they wanted something that was quite shimmery, and it's sort of like a mica type thing that gives you that little bit of shimmer, but it's wretchedly dangerous, lethal.
Right.
So any colour, the close would be a yellowish.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, in this modern day, it'd sort of be like a cadmium yellow.
Put a little mica in it or something. Put up some.
Yeah, you could do that if you wanted. Experiment. What else?
Experiment with orpiment.
No, don't do that. Okay, other questions?
Carol, I'll let you unmute yourself and ask also about the pigment that you were referring to.
Okay.
Oh, I was interested in the blue. You said that they used woad. Is that what it was? And what is that? Can you say something?
Yeah, woad is a plant, and it was very. It is very prominent, not prominent, what's the word I'm looking for? If you've ever seen any renditions of early Scottish um, battles and stuff like that, they used to put woad on their faces, and it was just a mixture of a plant material that grew everywhere. At first they thought that the pigment was lapis lazuli, because some manuscripts, particularly in the latter years, the Renaissance times, the lapis lazuli was much more easily available, but they have tested now the blue pigment because of all the latest instruments they've got in Ireland, and it's been stated that it is woad and not as previously thought. So yes, woad is a plant, a dye from a plant.
Thank you.
If anyone
Do a
else
bit of
has,
research.
if anyone else has questions, please unmute yourself and ask them.
Just one question. This may be outside of your expertise, but is the text today different in any significant way from and the text in Kells different in any significant way from what we have in the Gospels today?
In a handwritten gospel, or in what type of gospel?
Oh, just the received text we have today, 1,200 years later. I mean, are there any differences or variations in the text, the Gospels?
Oh, well, the text itself, these are one of the earliest Gospels, and the Gospels have been realigned over the centuries according to various influences in the church. However, as a young Catholic girl, I knew the Beatitudes, and that was one of the pages that I showed you. Our Gospels have that. Also, the genealogy of Joseph, that is also still in our Gospel books, I believe. So those important things in the Gospels, the message of that, are still viable today in our Gospels. I do know that. And I think that is what you're asking, the actual text itself. I am not a Latin scholar, and I am not a religious scholar by any shot. So you could do a little more research on that. Not that I want to give that as the answer, but it's my understanding that a lot of the text in something like the Book of Kells or the Lindisfarne is very similar. If you think it's our only source, then it really should be quite similar. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that helps.
Gemma, if I might, I answer that a bit more fully.
Thank you, Nancy. You're the girl.
Subsequent discoveries, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls, would have substantially changed the nuances in a text that obviously the people back then had not found yet. So the text we have today will be not in essence, but in translation, somewhat different.
Okay, thank you, Nancy, because your input's really important there.
So my question is about being able to have access to the recording. I'm sorry I came in a little late, and I hope you will share that. It was very, very interesting.
Yes, we are going to create a YouTube of this recording, and we will send the link out to everybody that's here in attendance, plus the people that were on the wait list, because as we
Thank you
said, we
so much.
counted at 500, and we have some on the wait list. Unfortunately, we didn't have 500, but we have a lot of people that are at a different time zone, so we will be sending the link out. Give us a couple of days to transfer it from the cloud to YouTube. And Raul, you're going to send it out, correct?
That is correct. I will send it out through Eventbrite to all the registrants.
Thank you, Raul.
Lovely.
Sarah Loesch, Frank, if you want to explain, you wrote down here about woad, how it smells terrible. Do you want to go into that? Because Sarah, you are sort of an expert in that area.
Lovely.
So she's going to unmute herself, and I'm putting her on the spot.
So
in the movie Braveheart, remember Mel Gibson painted himself blue?
That's
That
right.
was a traditional thing, but they made the people that did the dye with woad live as far away from the community as possible because it stained your hands and it stained your feet, and it's sort of a sulfury thing, so it's really smelly and terrible. But it was a beautiful dye, not as strong as indigo, but woad grows in cold climates or up north, and it's a weed. And then indigo grows in temperate climates. So, but they're both dyes.
Thanks,
And
Sarah.
woad is terribly invasive, and
Yeah.
it's not allowed in a lot of countries. The
I,
plant.
I just looked it up in this wonderful book called Mythopia.
Thanks, Barry.
And part of the production of woad, it says, was that the plant had to be soaked in urine for at least 3 days, then left out in the sun to dry. And then they formed the ball from it, and they were able to store it. So here it is in its glory.
Yeah.
Oh,
Related,
And they wiped it on their faces.
Yeah.
related to Indian yellow. Yeah. So
Well, part of it, it says part of it turned yellow afterwards.
Well, thank you for that, Barry. That's some great insight, and I'll be thinking of woad next time I use it. Soaked in urine. But if you think about it, urine is it's a substance that's being filtered through the body. So in those times, they wouldn't have been able to get really fresh water. So I'm imagining that urine would have been the closest thing to that. So it's not that far-fetched.
Well, urine has ammonia, and they used it as a cleaning agent also.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I add that verdigris was also from copper. They put copper in a log and added the uric acid and buried that log for 3 months or something and took it back up, and the verdigris was on the copper, and that's how they made the green. I got that at the British Museum, by the way.
Perfect. Other questions, or are we good to go? How are you going?
yes, Nancy.
I was wondering, did they indeed scrape off mistakes as well from the vellum?
There's not a lot of evidence in the Book of Kells that a lot of scraping went on. Absolutely, definitely in other manuscripts, we know that the scraping of the vellum. I think that, as I said, there's not a lot of evidence that they did that, but there is evidence of the dots. And there's not also in the Book of Kells, they haven't got that later habit that the Renaissance scribes had of, you know, you miss out a passage and then they, you know, carry it up the side in the marginals with the hand going like this, or a monkey's got a pulley. And, you know, I think in the Renaissance times they had all these really clever ideas. In Kells' time we don't see any of that, but keep in mind that the pages were only 12 to 15 lines, no more than 15, 20 lines on a page. So I'd just say that perhaps not at that time, not that earlier time, particularly when God was quite happy to forgive them the mistakes by putting the little dots in. So, you know, I'm good with that.
Terrific.
I read in my edition of the Book of Kells, I bought this facsimile 35 years ago, huge thing. And in the discussion of it, it says that technicians or whoever studied all the knot work, and they found that it is 97% accurate.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. If you
pretty
think at the
amazing.
time, they had prisms to work to enlarge things by looking, and also keep in mind that the scribes would have been young. They would not have been elderly, and their eyes would have been really extremely good quality, unlike us who can have their cataracts removed and, you know. So, yeah, so true.
Amazing.
You can always drop me a line if you want to ask some more questions. Remember, I'm not an academic, but a technician, and I'm happy to help in any way I can or lead you to find what you're looking for. So my email is very straightforward, gemma@gemmablack.com. So don't hesitate. All right.
I'm turning it over to you, Elena.
Well, thank you so much, Gemma, and thanks all of you who signed in and all of you who stayed. And we appreciate it, and hope to see you next time for another lecture, which we hope to have in I think November or December is our next one, but we have to organize that one.
All right, we do have Thomas Engmeyer will be giving a talk in November.
November. Yeah.
I think Saturday, I think it's November 20th.
Oh, we have the date. Good.
I do. Right. Let me double check, but I think it was, but anyway, Thomas Engmeyer is our next speaker. We're trying to do one every other month. So in November 20th at 1 o'clock.
Oh, also on October 6th.
Oh, yeah, October 9th. No, October
6th. We're
Wednesday.
having on Van Hinten Reich talking. So that will be fun too. And that will be in the morning, 10 o'clock, I think, in California time.
So Wednesday.
Yes.
So Wednesday.
So I hope you can join us for that one.
Do we need to be members of your organization to get notice of those? Or since we have, if we're not members and have participated in this lecture, will we get notices of the others?
You can look on our website. I think it's already listed there.
Okay, thank you.
Raul, could you talk about them for the website, the calendar page on the FOC website?
Okay, thank you.
Muted, Raul.
It's so pleasant to be part of this club, though.
Yes, it is they're on the classes page and on the events page. I will send you the link to the calendar page. That is the events page right now. I'm sending a link to everyone to the Friends of Calligraphy calendar page, where you can register for Anne Van Hentenrijk's lecture, which will be on October 6th.
Thank you.
Thanks, Raul. And again, all of our lectures are free, so please join us. It's a great opportunity during COVID to all come together. Great lectures.
Can I just say a very big thank you to everybody? Thank you all so much for coming from all quarters of the world to this little lecture. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned a little something about the Book of Kells. I really appreciate you being here with me. So thank you.
And thank you,
Gemma. Thank you.
Gemma.
Gemma. Tell the oboe player thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Missing his breakfast.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Elena, Nancy, Raul,
Yeah.
Evelyn. Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Elizabeth.
Bye, everybody.
So I'm going to end the meeting. Do we need to stay on, Elena, or not?
No, I think we're good. Thank you.
I think you should stop the recording.
Oh, that's a good point. Thank you.
Elena, that's such a wonderful background behind you.
Well, thanks. It got dark, didn't it?
Yes, but it looks like you're part of the Book of Kells.